I am so sorry, James. Please forgive me. I will make things right. I promise I will.
It is not about making things right, but with yourself. If you can change, learn to forgive and yield. Maybe there is hope for both of us.
James and Mabel had been married for 10 years and were blessed with two beautiful children, Kelly and Anita. Their life seemed perfect from the outside. James worked as a project manager in a reputable construction company, while Mabel was a bank manager. James was a loving husband who often went out of his way to ensure his family's happiness. Shopping for groceries, school supplies, or anything else was James' responsibility. But after 10 years of marriage, things started to change. James lost his job. At first, Mabel was understanding. She comforted him and promised that they would get through it together. However, as time passed, things began to get worse. Mabel started to grow impatient. She began calling James names like lazy and useless. She would shout at him, especially when they were with friends or in public. She embarrassed him in front of her family, telling them that she was one doing everything. She said, "I'm the one paying the bills and taking care of everything now." James felt helpless and sad. He spent months looking for a new job, but nothing came through. He became more and more depressed. The man who had once been the provider for his family now felt like a failure. His self-esteem dropped, and he could no longer recognize the life he once had. One night, after another argument with Mabel, he felt like he couldn't take it anymore. The weight of his depression and the harsh words from his wife were too much for him. James thought about ending it all. James sat on the edge of the bed, his hand trembling as he looked at the sharp object in his hand. His mind was filled with dark thoughts, the pressure of everything weighing him down. Just as he was about to make a decision, a small voice interrupted his thoughts. "Daddy, what are you doing?" James froze, the object slipping from his hand as he stared at his son. Chijioke rushed to him, grabbing his hand, his small voice trembling. "Please, Daddy, don't do it. Daddy, I love you. Please, don't harm yourself." James felt a sharp pang in his heart. He looked at his son, whose face was full of concern. In that moment, he realized how much he had to live for. His son and daughter needed him, and he couldn't bear the thought of leaving them alone. James wiped away the tears in his eyes, pulling Chijioke into a tight hug. "Thank you, son," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You saved me." Later that afternoon, James' old friend Paul stopped by to visit. Paul had heard about James' troubles and decided to check on him. He found James sitting quietly, still looking drained but now surrounded by his family. Paul could see the sadness in his friend's eyes. "James, what's going on?" Paul asked gently. James sighed, explaining everything that had happened: losing his job, Mabel's harsh treatment, and the struggle he had faced trying to find work. Paul listened quietly before speaking up. James, I have known you for a long time. You are a good man. You just need a fresh start. Maybe it is time for a change, Paul suggested. Come to Abuja with me. We can start over. There is opportunity there, and I believe you will get back on your feet. Mabel, who had been sitting quietly in the background, looked up sharply. What are you talking about, Paul? She snapped. You think running away will solve everything? Paul turned to her calmly. Mabel, your husband needs support, not insults. He is doing his best. Sometimes a change of environment can help bring new opportunities. If he stays here with all this pressure, he might never recover. James looked from his friend to his wife. His mind was a whirlwind, unsure of what to do. He had always been the one to make decisions, but now he felt lost. Mabel's eyes showed frustration, but James could see the small flicker of guilt there too. Should he stay and fight through the storm at home, or should he take Paul's advice and leave for a fresh start? The decision was heavy on his heart, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. After Paul left, Mabel's anger boiled over. She couldn't hold back any longer. As James sat silently, trying to gather his thoughts, Mabel began to shout. You are so pathetic, James, she yelled. I honestly think it would be better if you weren't even alive than to continue being here, useless and good for nothing. You've done nothing for yourself or this family. Nothing. Her words hit James like a slap in the face. He flinched, feeling the sting of her cruel deep in his heart. Mabel's voice grew louder, her fury impossible to contain. Even if you go abroad, you will amount to nothing. You think things will be different just because you leave this place? You are nothing but a failure. James, she cursed, her face twisted in rage. James stood up, feeling a mix of anger and hurt, but he knew fighting back wouldn't help. He could feel the weight of the years of insult crashing down on him. He opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Mabel cut him off. Don't even think about going near my car, James. Pointing toward the driveway. You can barely take care of yourself, let alone fix your own scrap of a car. I will drive myself wherever I need to go. You should be ashamed of yourself for letting things get this bad. Her words were like daggers, each one piercing deeper into James' soul. He had always tried to keep things together, to make her proud, but it felt like no matter what he did, it was never enough. Her anger, the constant barrage of insults, and a lack of support made him feel smaller than ever. How could she say that? He thought to himself, feeling the sadness creeping again. The person who was supposed to love and supported him was the one tearing him down. But something inside him stirred. He realized that he couldn't keep letting Mabel break him down. Maybe it was time to take that step Paul suggested. Maybe it was time to leave. Not just for a job, but to reclaim the person he used to be, the man who had dreams, who had hope. Still, the thought of leaving his family, even with everything that had happened, felt like an impossible choice. Would it be the right decision? Could he really leave everything behind? For now, James could only stand in silence, the harsh words from Mabel echoing in his mind. The pain of his marriage, the loss of his job, and the feeling of being trapped were consuming him. He knew something had to change. But what?
One quiet evening, James sat on the edge of the bed, his bags packed and ready for the journey. The decision had been made. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he couldn't stay any longer in a place where his worth was constantly questioned, where his own wife had no faith in him. He needed to do this for himself. Taking a deep breath, James dialed Mabel's number. The phone rang several times before she answered, her voice sharp and cold as usual. "James, what do you want now?" "I have made a decision." His voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "I'm leaving for Abuja. I will try to find work there. Maybe a fresh start will help." There was a long pause before Mabel erupted. "So you are just going to run away? You think running to Abuja will change anything? You will still be the same useless man you are now, no matter where you go. You think I need you? You think I care? You have failed this family, and now you are abandoning us." James winced as her words sliced through him. "I'm not abandoning you, Mabel. I'm doing this for me, for a chance to rebuild myself. I'll call when I can." "Don't bother. I don't think you can even come back here. You are a joke," Mabel shouted before hanging up, leaving James with a heavy heart and a deep sense of loneliness. With that, James closed the door behind him, and he left Benny in the dead of night, heading toward the unknown. The journey to Abuja was long and tiring, but he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was what he needed: a new place, new possibilities, a chance to find his purpose again. When he arrived in Abuja, Paul was waiting for him. His friend greeted him warmly, offering a place to stay and support as James got settled. "Don't worry, James. We'll get through this," Paul reassured him, though he could see the weariness in his friend's eyes. James began searching for a job the very next day. He sent applications to countless companies, attended interviews, and networked as much as he could. But weeks passed and nothing changed. 4 months went by and still he had no luck. The disappointment was slowly wearing him down. Each rejection later felt like another blow to his already fragile self-esteem. Throughout this time, James would call Mabel every few days to check in on her and the children. But each time, Mabel's response was as cruel as ever. She never allowed him to speak with their children, no matter how much he begged to hear their voices. "Why are you even calling?" Mabel would snap. "You are no use to them. They don't need a father like you. You are just a failure. You are useless." James kept his emotions in check, though the pain cut deep every time. Every conversation felt like a battle he could never win. Each call was filled with insults and curses, leaving him feeling more isolated than ever. "Maybe I should have just stayed at home," James thought to himself one night, as he lay awake in the small room Paul had offered him. At least, there, Mabel's cruel words were familiar. Here, I have no family, no home, just an endless search for something that might never come. But despite the hopelessness creeping into his thoughts, he didn't give up. Something inside him refused to surrender. He kept going, waking up each day and pushing forward, even if the path ahead was unclear. He couldn't stop now, not when he was this close
to finding a way out of the dark. James' frustration grew with each passing day. The job hunt seemed endless, and the harsh words from Mabel continued to haunt him. He tried calling her again and again, but she had changed her line. When he finally reached some of her family members, they told him she had been spreading rumors that James had abandoned them. It hurt knowing that the woman he had once loved so deeply was now turning everyone against him. He couldn't bear the weight of it all anymore. The silence, the isolation, the constant rejection, it was too much. One afternoon, after yet another failed attempt at finding work, James sat on the floor of his small room in Abuja. In his hands, he held a bottle of sleeping pills. His mind was clouded, the thought of escape too tempting. Just as he was about to take the pills, his phone rang. He hesitated for a moment, unsure if he wanted to face anyone, but reluctantly he answered. "Hello? Is this James?" a professional voice asked on the other hand. "Yes," James replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is from Global Builders International. We have reviewed your application and would like to invite you for an interview." James sat up straight, the bottle of pills still in his hand. "What?" he asked, his heart racing. "You want to interview me?" "Yes, we're impressed with your experience and would like to meet you. Will you come by our office tomorrow?" James was in disbelief. He had been rejected from so many companies, and now this? It felt too good to be true, yet he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to turn around. The next day, he went to the interview. He wore the only suit he had, and for the first time in months, he felt a small spark of confidence. The interview went well, and a week later, he received the news that he had been hired by the multinational company. Not only that, but they also offered him a 6-month training program abroad, an opportunity that James could hardly believe. With tears of relief and joy in his eyes, he contacted Paul to share the good news. "Paul, I got a job. I'm going abroad for training. I can't believe it." "That's amazing, James," Paul exclaimed. "I knew you had it in you. This is your chance. Go and make it count." James thanked Paul, and in the midst of his happiness, remembered his children. He didn't want them to suffer because of his absence. So in a quiet act of kindness, he sent money to Paul to pay for their school fees. He asked Paul to keep it anonymous, wanting to help his family without Mabel knowing. As James prepared for his journey abroad, things at home were unraveling for Mabel. The bank where she worked had gone under, and she lost her job. She had to face the harsh reality of her situation. Without James' income, she struggled to maintain the life she had once enjoyed. The family's financial stability, once secured by her job, began to crumble. But Mabel's pride wouldn't allow her to reach out to James. She continued to tell people that he had abandoned her, refusing to acknowledge her role in the breakdown of their marriage. Meanwhile, her resentment and bitterness toward James only grew, even as she faced hardship of her own. James, on the other hand, focused on his training abroad. He worked hard, pushing himself to learn everything he could. The 6 months passed quickly, and the experience transformed him. He gained confidence, skills, and a renewed sense of purpose. But even with all his success, a part of him still felt the weight of his family's situation, especially with Mabel's ongoing resentments. Months abroad, James returned to Abuja as a manager in the multinational company. His time abroad had transformed him not only in skills, but also in mindset. He felt stronger, more confident, and determined to take control of his life. Yet a part of him still yearned to confront his past, to face Mabel, to see if there was any chance of reconciliation, or if the woman he had once loved was lost forever. James decided to return home, but not as the man who left. He would go back in disguise, dressed in simple clothes, so that he could see how Mabel had truly been living without him. He arrived at the house and stood at a distance, watching as Mabel came out to hang laundry. He noticed how much thinner she had become. She looked worn, but the arrogance and pride in her demeanor hadn't faded. James sighed. He had once known this woman, and though she had hurt him deeply, he still saw something inside her that deserved compassion. He decided to test the waters. Changing into a plain outfit, he approached the door. When Mabel saw him, her face twisted in anger. "What do you want now, James?" she snapped. "Coming back to bother me, huh? I told you before, I don't need you. You are nothing but a failure." James stood calm, unaffected by her words. He had changed. He had been through enough, and he wasn't going to let her words bring him down. Minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Mabel rolled her eyes, still fuming, and opened it. To her surprise, a young man stood there holding a mobile phone. "I'm looking for my boss, James," he said. Mabel looked from the young man to James in confusion. James nodded, signaling for the young man to come in. Mabel watched as James took the phone from the young man. "Hello?" James answered, his voice calm and confident. Mabel strained to hear the conversation. She could make out snippets. "Yes, sir. I'm ready for the assignment in the UK. When should I depart?" "I'll be prepared." "Yes, I will arrange everything." Mabel's eyes widened in disbelief. She stared at James, stunned. What is this? Are you actually working somewhere important?" she stammered. James turned to her, his expression steady. "I'm working with a multinational company." "Mabel, maybe you were too busy with anger to notice, but I've made something of myself." Mabel blinked, her shock still evident. James continued, "And by the way, I've been the one paying the children's school fees. I have been helping you more than you realize. You may not have noticed, but I've been watching over them. I even arranged for Paul to send you 5 million naira into your account. It is a payment that will look like your bank paid you off, but it's from me." Mabel's face turned pale as the weight of his words sank in. She had no idea. All this time, she thought James had abandoned them, but he had been quietly taking care of everything, all while building a new life for himself. James looked at her calmly. "You've spent so much time being angry at me. But the truth is, I've always cared. I just couldn't be part of the toxic cycle anymore. You pushed me away, and now I've found a better path." Mabel stood frozen, her eyes welling up with tears. She could barely speak, her mind racing to process everything. She had been wrong about him. She had let her anger blind her to the truth. "James, I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I've been so cruel to you. I didn't understand. Please forgive me." James watched her, his heart heavy. He knew it would take time for Mabel to heal from her own bitterness, but he had to let her come to terms with her actions. "You've hurt me, Mabel. James said softly. But I'm not hungry anymore. I've learned that sometimes people don't realize what they have lost until it's gone. But I can't carry your hunger with me anymore. I have moved on. Mabel nodded, tears flowing freely now. Please, James. I have been so wrong. I will make things right. I will. James paused before responding. It is not about making things right with me anymore. It's about making things right with yourself. If you change, you can learn to forgive and heal, then maybe there is hope for both of us. But I won't return to the past. I have moved on. I hope you can too. Mabel fell on her knees, truly remorseful for the first time in years.